They weren't supposed to be legends, just two bored kids from a town that had stopped dreaming. But when Tyler Gibbs and Aaron Ramsdale walked away with $19 million in cash and left behind nothing but a single photograph staring directly into a surveillance camera, the FBI realized they weren't chasing amateurs. They were chasing ghosts who wanted to be remembered. Before we dive in, let me welcome you to True Crime Case Notes, where we share daring and unfathomable stories that question all you thought you once knew about heists and the psychology of men. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. I love getting to know each of you. Click the like, share, and subscribe buttons to stay updated on our latest contents, and stay tuned, because tomorrow's story is going to be just as epic, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. The fluorescent lights in Mr. Patterson's economics classroom flickered with the kind of irregularity that suggested the Riverside High School maintenance budget had died somewhere around 2003, and nobody had bothered to hold a funeral. Tyler Gibbs sat in the back row, his laptop screen reflecting in his glasses as lines of code scrolled past. Something he was building for fun, or maybe out of spite against the universe that had deposited him in this particular corner of Tennessee. Aaron Ramsdale sat 2 seats over, spinning a pen between his fingers with the casual precision of someone who'd learned early that looking effortless was its own kind of power. He was listening to Patterson drone on about supply and demand curves, but only with the surface level of his attention. The rest of his mind was cataloging details. The way Patterson's tie was slightly loosened, suggesting he'd already given up on the day by third period. The fact that Jenny Morrison in the front row was checking her phone every 47 seconds, probably texting that boyfriend who'd eventually cheat on her with her cousin. The underlying truth that everyone in this room was pretending education mattered when they all knew the textile mill was either going to hire them or it wasn't. And college was a fantasy their parents couldn't afford, even if they were smart enough to get in. Which Tyler was. And Aaron probably could have been, if he'd cared enough to try. All right, Patterson said, clapping his hands together with forced enthusiasm that made Tyler wince. Let's try something different. Engagement activity. He said it like he'd just invented fire. Here's a hypothetical for you all. If you wanted to commit the perfect crime in today's world, with all our technology and surveillance, how would you actually do it? The class perked up marginally. Crime was at least more interesting than elasticity of demand. Rob the Walmart, someone shouted from the middle row. Laughter rippled through the classroom. Nah, sell fake IDs to freshmen, another voice offered. Easy money. Patterson was writing suggestions on the whiteboard, probably feeling very proud of his innovative teaching methods. Tyler and Aaron hadn't said anything yet, but Tyler's fingers had stopped moving on his keyboard. Aaron had stopped spinning his pen. They looked at each other. It was the kind of look that happens between people who've been friends so long they've developed their own frequency, a silent language built from years of inside jokes, shared humiliations, and the particular bond that forms between smart kids stuck in a small town that has no use for intelligence beyond knowing which buttons to push at the Walmart self-checkout. Federal Reserve courier route, Tyler said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the classroom chatter like a knife through butter. The room went silent. Patterson turned around, marker still in hand. I'm sorry, what? Tyler looked up from his laptop, meeting Patterson's eyes with that unnerving directness he had. You asked how to commit the perfect crime. Federal Reserve courier route. Cash in transit. Analog security protocols that haven't been updated since the 90s because bureaucracy moves slower than continental drift. Human error exploitable at multiple touchpoints. His fingers were already moving across his phone now, pulling up data with the ease of someone who could navigate digital systems the way other people breathed. Third-party contractors handle most regional cash transport. Cost-saving measure. Which means you're not dealing with elite federal security. You're dealing with underpaid drivers in retrofitted armored trucks who probably make less than the manager at Taco Bell. Aaron leaned back in his chair, that trademark half-smile playing at his lips like he was about to tell you a secret and charge you for the privilege. The beautiful thing about cash, he added, his voice smooth as expensive whiskey, is that it doesn't have a digital footprint. You can't hack it, can't trace it through blockchain, can't follow metadata breadcrumbs. It's just paper, dead trees with numbers printed on them. And everyone's so focused on cybercrime, on cryptocurrency heists and identity theft, that they've completely forgotten the old playbooks. Patterson stared at them. The rest of the class stared at them. Jenny Morrison had actually stopped checking her phone. That's... Patterson started, then stopped. He wrote, creative thinking, next to their names on the board, his handwriting shaky in a way that suggested he wasn't entirely sure if he should be encouraging this line of thought or reporting them to the principal. That's very thorough, gentlemen. A+ for innovation. The class laughed again, but it was different this time. Uncertain. Tyler and Aaron didn't laugh. They just looked at each other again, and something passed between them that neither of them would be able to articulate until much later. The recognition that the joke they just made wasn't entirely a joke. That somewhere in the theoretical discussion of the perfect crime, they'd stumbled onto something that felt less like fantasy and more like blueprint. The bell rang. Students shuffled out, already forgetting the conversation, already moving on to lunch and drama and the small concerns of small-town teenagers. Tyler closed his laptop. Aaron stopped spinning his pen. "You were serious," Aaron said. "It wasn't a question. Were you?" Tyler countered. Aaron grinned, and it was the kind of grin that should have come with a warning label. "I'm never serious about anything, which is exactly why people believe everything I say." They walked out of the classroom together, past Patterson, who was erasing the whiteboard, eliminating all evidence of their theoretical heist like it had never happened. What Patterson didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Tyler had already screenshot the data on his phone, saved it to an encrypted folder, titled simply, Economics Extra Credit. And Aaron had already started mentally cataloging the logistics, running through scenarios the way other people ran through fantasy football brackets. They'd just written their future. They just didn't know it yet. 5 years have a way of passing differently depending on where you're standing. In places like New York or Los Angeles, 5 years is a blink. A startup launched and sold, 3 relationships, 2 apartments, a complete reinvention of self. In Riverside, Tennessee, 5 years is geological time. Mountains could erode faster than circumstances changed in this town. Tyler Gibbs had gone to community college for computer science, lasted exactly 1 semester before realizing the curriculum was teaching him things he taught himself at 14. He dropped out and took a job doing IT for Med Supply Distribution, a medical equipment company that operated out of a converted warehouse on the edge of town. His days consisted of resetting passwords for people who wrote them on Post-it notes stuck to their monitors, explaining that turning it off and on again wasn't a joke, but actual technical advice, and slowly dying inside while pretending he was building toward something. He wasn't. Aaron Ramsdale had tried his hand at selling cars first. Used ones at Murphy's Auto Sales, where he learned that people will believe anything if you say it with enough confidence and a firm handshake. Then insurance, where he discovered that fear is the most profitable human emotion. Then timeshares, which was basically selling insurance on dreams people couldn't afford. Each job taught him something valuable. How to read micro-expressions, how to forge signatures that felt authentic rather than perfect. Authenticity is flaws. Perfection looks fake. And how to lie so convincingly that he sometimes forgot where the truth ended and the performance began. The only constant was Thursday nights at Rusty's bar. Rusty's was the kind of establishment that made depression look aspirational. The neon sign outside had been broken for 3 years, so it just read, Rue Wiseba, which felt somehow appropriate. Inside, the air smelled like spilled beer, broken dreams, and the particular desperation of people drinking to forget they had nowhere better to be. The floor was sticky. The jukebox only played country music from the 90s. The bathroom had a sign that said, Employees must wash hands, that someone had edited with Sharpie to read, Employees must wash hands of this place. Tyler and Aaron had claimed the corner booth as their own years ago. Every Thursday, 7 p.m., without fail, they'd order the same thing. Cheap beer and wings that tasted like regret, but cost $4 for a dozen. You know what's insane? Aaron said one particular Thursday, his third beer giving him that familiar reckless gleam in his eyes. The same gleam that had once convinced a gym teacher to let them skip rope climbing by presenting a PowerPoint on the statistical dangers of friction burns. We're actually smart enough to do this. Like, genuinely capable. Tyler stared at the condensation on his glass, watching water droplets race each other down the side. Being capable and being willing are different things. Are they, though? Aaron leaned forward, his voice dropping to that conspiratorial tone that meant he was about to say something they'd both been thinking but hadn't voiced out loud. We're rotting here, man. You're fixing printers for people who think the cloud is a weather phenomenon. Yesterday, I sold a 72-year-old woman a whole life insurance policy. Whole life. She's got maybe 10 years left, and she's paying premiums for coverage that benefits nobody because she outlived everyone she loved. And I smiled and shook her hand and pretended I was helping her. He took another drink. This town is quicksand. We're not escaping it. We're just sinking slower than our parents did. Tyler's jaw tightened. He thought about his mother, Lisa, working double shifts at Riverside General Hospital for 23 years. Her hands shook now, permanent tremors from repetitive strain that no amount of physical therapy could fix. She'd given her body to that hospital, and they'd given her a $10 Starbucks gift card for her 20th anniversary and cut her healthcare benefits the following year. He thought about Aaron's father, Robert Ramsdale, who'd been temporarily laid off from Morrison Textiles 6 years ago. The temporary layoff that everyone knew was permanent, but nobody would admit out loud because that would make it real. Robert still got up at 5 a.m. every day, got dressed, and sat in his garage workshop building furniture nobody needed, because routine was the only thing holding him together. The plan, Tyler said quietly. Not a question, a statement. Aaron's half-smile returned, but there was something different in it now. Something that had been theoretical 5 years ago in Patterson's classroom, but had calcified into something harder, sharper, more desperate during 5 years of watching their potential rot in a town that had no use for it. Every Thursday for 5 years, we've been refining it, Aaron said. At first it was a joke. Then it was a thought experiment. Then it was a fantasy. But somewhere along the way, he trailed off. Somewhere along the way it became possible, Tyler finished. They sat in silence for a moment, the jukebox playing Friends in Low Places like it was offering editorial commentary on their lives. Tyler pulled out his phone, opened an app that looked like a fitness tracker, but was actually an encrypted folder system he'd built himself. Inside was everything. 5 years of Thursday night conversations translated into actionable intelligence. Maps of Federal Reserve courier routes, traffic patterns, security protocols, GPS dead zones, employee shift rotations gleaned from social media posts of armored car drivers who posted their schedules on Facebook like they were working at Dairy Queen instead of transporting millions in cash. Sentinel Logistics LLC, Tyler said, pulling up a website on his phone. Registered in Delaware 8 months ago. Complete with employee reviews, a phone number that routes to burner phones, and a corporate history that looks legitimate because it is legitimate. It's just legitimately fake. Aaron whistled low. You've been busy. We've been busy, Tyler corrected. You're the one who got us into the security conference database in Nashville. That fake badge you had me make. I saw the photos. You were networking with actual Federal Reserve contractors. They loved me, Aaron said, grinning. Bought me drinks. Told me everything about their operations. You know what I learned? The system works on trust. These aren't elite operators guarding nuclear codes. They're just guys doing a job, making $15 an hour to transport millions. Most of them are one failed background check away from needing the money they're guarding. Tyler opened another file. I've built complete digital identities for 2 security contractors. Employment history going back 6 years. References that check out because the phone numbers route to burners I control. Social media profiles aged with automated posts, vacation photos, birthday wishes, complaints about traffic. The internet thinks these people have existed their entire lives. How long would it take? Aaron asked. The question they've been dancing around for 5 years. The heist itself, 11 minutes, give or take. Everything else, preparation, execution, disappearance. We could do it in 3 months if we committed right now. Aaron raised his glass. His hand was steady. Let's make sure they remember us. Tyler clinked his glass against Aaron's, and something fundamental shifted in the universe. Or maybe just in that sticky corner booth at Rusty's bar where dreams went to die, but occasionally, just occasionally, got resurrected by desperate men with nothing left to lose. Let's make sure they can't forget us. They didn't shake hands, didn't sign anything, didn't make it official in any traditional sense. But they both knew that the joke had ended. The plan had begun. And Riverside, Tennessee, that town where nothing ever happened, where ambition went to retire early, was about to become the birthplace of the most audacious cash heist in American history. They just didn't know yet that the hardest part wouldn't be stealing $19 million. It would be deciding what kind of legend they wanted to become. The thing about committing the perfect crime is that it's 90% preparation and 10% performance. Tyler had read that somewhere, probably in one of the true crime books he'd consumed over the past 5 years, or maybe in a case study about failed bank robberies where amateur thieves spent more time planning their getaway cars than understanding the systems they were trying to exploit. He and Aaron weren't going to be amateurs. The Federal Reserve contracted with third-party security companies for regional cash transport, a cost-saving measure that would make any decent accountant weep into their spreadsheets. It was the bureaucratic equivalent of hiring your cousin's friend to guard your life savings because he seemed trustworthy and charged less than the professionals. Sentinel Logistics LLC had submitted bids for 3 different contracts over the past 8 months. They'd lost all 3, which was exactly according to plan. The goal wasn't to win. The goal was to exist in the system, to build a paper trail of near misses and professional correspondence that made them look like a legitimate company that simply wasn't quite competitive enough. "We got another rejection," Aaron announced one Thursday, reading an email on his phone. "Memphis route. They went with Guardian Transport instead." "Perfect," Tyler said, making notes in his encrypted file. "That puts us in their database as a known entity. Professional. Persistent. Not desperate enough to underbid suspiciously, but hungry enough to keep trying." "You know what's beautiful about this?" Aaron set his phone down, that analytical gleam in his eyes that appeared whenever he was working through a con. "Most criminals think like criminals. They assume the system is designed to catch them, so they try to work around it. But we're thinking like the system. We're not trying to break in. We're knocking on the front door with a resume and a smile." Tyler pulled up a series of documents on his laptop. "Next phase. You need to get into that security conference in Nashville next month. The Regional Cash Transport Symposium." "The what now?" Aaron laughed. "That's a real thing. There's a conference for people who drive money around. Annual event. 300 attendees. Federal Reserve representatives, security contractors, insurance underwriters, technology vendors. It's basically Comic-Con for people who take cash transit way too seriously." Tyler turned the laptop around, showing Aaron the conference website. "Registration is closed, but I don't need registration when I have this." Aaron held up a blank white card. "Give me 4 hours in your Photoshop skills, and I'll have a badge that looks more official than the real ones." Tyler had created the badge in 3 hours. Aaron wore it to the conference wearing a suit that had cost 3 months of his timeshare commission. Charcoal gray, tailored, with the kind of quiet expense that suggested he owned buildings rather than rented apartments. He'd practiced his persona for weeks. Garrett Thompson, VP of Operations for a mid-sized logistics company looking to expand into secure transport. The conference was held at the Renaissance Hotel in downtown Nashville, in a ballroom that smelled like recycled air and the particular desperation of salespeople working on commission. Aaron walked in like he owned the place, which was the secret to every successful con. People believe what you project, not what you are. Garrett Thompson. He introduced himself to a man wearing a name tag that read, Bill Morrison, Guardian Transport, the same company that had beaten Sentinel Logistics for the Memphis route. VP of Ops at Meridian Security Solutions. "Hell of a conference you folks put together." Bill Morrison's handshake was firm but tired. "Bill, Guardian Transport. You guys thinking about getting into cash transit?" "Exploring options," Aaron said, which was technically true. "Been in general logistics for 8 years, but the security sector looks promising. Stable contracts, steady revenue. Though I'll admit, the regulatory landscape seems complex." "Complex is one word for it." Bill laughed, and just like that, Aaron had him. People love to complain about their jobs to sympathetic strangers. It's cheaper than therapy and more socially acceptable than day drinking. Over the next 6 hours, Aaron worked the conference like a symphony conductor. He bought drinks. He laughed at mediocre jokes. He asked questions that made people feel important while extracting information that would have cost millions in corporate espionage. He learned that drivers frequently disabled GPS tracking to make personal stops, picking up lunch, stopping at ATMs, running quick errands, because the monitoring systems flagged any deviation from optimal routes, and nobody wanted to explain why they needed to pee during a 6-hour shift. He learned that shift rotations were predictable, usually two-person teams working 12-hour days, exhausted and underpaid, and dreaming about the vacation days they couldn't afford to take. He learned that authorization codes were often written on laminated cards kept in glove compartments, because drivers couldn't be expected to memorize 16-digit alphanumeric sequences that changed monthly. He learned that there was a known GPS dead zone on Highway 64 between Memphis and Shelby County, 8 minutes where trucks regularly went dark due to a combination of geography, outdated infrastructure, and the fact that nobody had budgeted for tower upgrades in a rural stretch that didn't generate enough tax revenue to justify the expense. Most importantly, he learned that the system worked on trust. These weren't elite federal agents protecting state secrets. They were just people doing a job, following protocols that made sense on paper, but fell apart under the weight of human nature and budget constraints. The weak point isn't the technology, Aaron reported back to Tyler that night, sitting in Tyler's apartment surrounded by 3 monitors and enough computer equipment to run a small data center. The weak point is the fact that they trust the protocols more than they verify them. If you look official, have the right paperwork, and act like you belong there, nobody questions it. They're too tired, too overworked, and too underpaid to care. Tyler was already building something on his screen, digital identities for 2 security contractors named James Chun and David Morrison. Complete employment histories. References. Social media profiles that went back 4 years, carefully aged with automated posts. Vacation photos from stock image sites. Birthday wishes to fictional friends. Complaints about traffic and weather and sports teams. Chun and Morrison. Aaron read over Tyler's shoulder. You gave us Asian and white identities. Diversity looks legitimate, Tyler said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Plus, Chun is the 3rd most common surname in the world. Morrison is top 50 in the U.S. We're hiding in plain sight by being statistically average. He pulled up another window showing a complex web of data, route maps, timing schedules, traffic patterns, weather forecasts. There's a Memphis route that runs every 3rd Thursday. Picks up from the Federal Reserve Bank at 2 p.m., scheduled arrival at the Shelby County Processing Center at 6:30 p.m. They pass through the GPS dead zone at approximately 4:47 p.m. How do you know all this? Aaron asked, though he already knew the answer. Because people post everything online. Driver's wife complains on Facebook that he's never home for dinner on Thursdays. Another driver posts photos of his route on Instagram, geotagged, with timestamps. Security company posts job openings listing shift requirements. Federal Reserve publishes quarterly transport schedules and regulatory filings that nobody reads because they're 800 pages of bureaucratic nonsense. You just have to know where to look. Aaron sat down, the weight of what they were actually planning settling over him like a blanket. This is real. We're really doing this. We can still stop, Tyler said, but his hands hadn't stopped moving on the keyboard. Can we, though? Aaron asked. I mean, really? Can we go back to Thursday nights at Rusty's, talking about what could have been, watching ourselves turn into our parents, bitter and broken, and wondering what the hell happened to all those dreams we had? Tyler stopped typing, turned to look at Aaron. Patterson's economics class. You remember what you said after we presented the Federal Reserve idea? I said a lot of things. I was 17 and thought I was smarter than I actually was. You said, the difference between a fantasy and a plan is just willingness to act. Tyler's expression was unreadable. Was that true? Or was it just something clever to say? Aaron met his eyes. Behind them, the monitors glowed with evidence of 5 years of Thursday nights, 5 years of careful planning, 5 years of too smart kid from a dead-end town, refusing to accept that intelligence without opportunity equals nothing. 3 months, Aaron said. We commit right now. Full execution in 3 months. After that, we're either legends or we're in federal prison. But at least we'll be something other than this. Tyler nodded slowly. Then he opened a new file, titled it Operation Blueprint, and began typing. The heist had officially begun, and in Riverside, Tennessee, where nothing ever happened and dreams went to die, 2 men who'd been invisible their entire lives were about to pull off something impossible. They just had to decide if becoming legends was worth becoming criminals. Or if maybe, just maybe, in a world that had already failed them, those 2 things weren't so different after all. The morning of the heist, Tyler woke up at 5:47 a.m. without an alarm. His body knew. The same way animals know when earthquakes are coming. The same way birds navigate thousands of miles using magnetic fields they can't see. Some part of his nervous system understood that today was different. He didn't feel nervous. That was the strange part. He'd expected anxiety, maybe nausea, the kind of existential dread that comes with realizing you're about to cross a line you can't uncross. Instead, he felt calm, focused, like this was something he'd been preparing for his entire life. And now that it was here, his brain had simply clicked into execution mode. 3 months of preparation condensed into 11 minutes of action. He showered, made coffee, ate toast with peanut butter because his stomach needed something but wouldn't accept anything more ambitious. He checked his phone. One message from Aaron, sent at 5:52 a.m. Beautiful day for a drive. Tyler allowed himself a small smile. Aaron's ability to stay loose under pressure was either going to save them or doom them. Probably both. The uniforms were perfect. Generic security contractor outfits purchased from a uniform supply company in Atlanta, altered slightly to match the exact specifications Tyler had screenshotted from a Guardian Transport employee's Instagram post. Navy blue pants, light blue shirts with embroidered patches that said Sentinel Security in official-looking fonts, reflective vests, clipboards, the kind of costume that was boring enough to be invisible. The red van was a 2018 Ford Transit, purchased from an auction in Little Rock using a shell company Tyler had created. Clean title, no distinctive markings, common enough to blend in with 10,000 other commercial vehicles on the road. They'd reinforced the rear suspension to handle the weight of $19 million, which sounded like a lot until you did the math. $1 million in $100 bills weighs approximately 22 pounds. 19 million would be roughly 418 pounds. Heavy, but manageable. Tyler had done the math. He'd done all the math. Aaron arrived at the warehouse they'd rented. Another shell company. Another layer of obfuscation. At 11:23 a.m. He was drinking an energy drink and wearing sunglasses that made him look like he was about to star in a low-budget action movie. "You look calm," Aaron observed, studying Tyler's face. "I am calm. That's either really good or really concerning." Aaron set down his drink, pulled out his phone, and ran through the checklist one more time. They'd done this 50 times in rehearsal, but repetition was what separated professionals from amateurs. Authorization codes, memorized and backed up on encrypted flash drives in 3 locations. Route timing, Federal Reserve pickup at 2 p.m. Expected departure, 2:17 p.m., based on historical average. They'll hit the GPS dead zone on Highway 64 at approximately 4:47 p.m., plus or minus 3 minutes, depending on traffic. Intercept point, mile marker, 2:37. There's a wide shoulder, natural curve in the road that justifies a safety checkpoint, and minimal traffic at that time on Thursdays. I've been monitoring the pattern for 6 months. Fake checkpoint equipment. Cones, signs, reflective markers. All legitimate safety equipment purchased from a construction supply company. We're not breaking any laws until we actually take the money. Tyler's laugh was dry. Well, except for the fraud, identity theft, and about 17 other felonies we've already committed in preparation. Aaron grinned. See, that's the spirit. If you're going to commit crimes, commit them with proper documentation. They loaded the equipment into the van. Everything had a place. Everything had a purpose. Tyler had mapped it out with the precision of a military operation because that's what this was. A tactical mission with defined objectives, contingency plans, and exit strategies. The drive to the intercept point took 93 minutes. They arrived at 3:51 p.m., giving them 56 minutes to set up what needed to look like a routine vehicle safety checkpoint. Tyler positioned the cones while Aaron erected a sign that read, "Security Inspection Ahead. Federal Compliance Check." "You think that's too on the nose?" Aaron asked, adjusting the sign. "People see what they expect to see. Federal Reserve contractors expect federal compliance checks. We're just confirming their worldview." At 4:44 p.m., Tyler's phone buzzed with a notification from the tracking app he'd built. The armored van had just passed the last cell tower before entering the dead zone. They had approximately 3 minutes. "Showtime," Aaron said quietly. Tyler felt his heartbeat accelerate slightly. Not panic, just the body's natural response to adrenaline. He adjusted his reflective vest, picked up his clipboard, and positioned himself in the middle of the road with the casual authority of someone who did this every day. At 4:46 p.m., the armored van came around the curve. Tyler raised his hand, the universal gesture for stop, backed by the official-looking checkpoint they'd created. The van slowed. Stopped. Aaron walked up to the driver's side window, clipboard in hand, smile on his face. Friendly but professional. The perfect balance of authority and approachability. He perfected selling timeshares to retirees. The driver rolled down his window. He looked tired. Of course he looked tired. It was hour 3 of a 12-hour shift, and he was being paid $15 an hour to transport enough money to buy a small island. Afternoon, gentlemen, Aaron said. Routine federal compliance audit. We just need to verify your cargo against the manifest. This'll take about 20 minutes. Then you'll be on your way. The driver exchanged a look with his partner. Tyler could see the internal calculation happening. Was this legitimate? It looked legitimate. The uniforms were right. The checkpoint looked official. And more importantly, they were exhausted, and being told they could take a 20-minute break was a gift from the universe. You guys want to grab coffee? Aaron continued, gesturing to the gas station visible in the distance. There's a convenience store about half a mile up. We'll secure the vehicle while we process the paperwork. Standard protocol. The second guard, younger, maybe mid-20s, looked skeptical. We're not supposed to leave the vehicle unattended. You're not, Tyler interjected, holding up an official-looking badge, one of Aaron's Photoshop masterpieces. Federal security contractors. The vehicle will be under our custody during the audit. It's actually safer than having you both sitting here in an isolated area. Security protocol updated last quarter after the incident in Ohio. There was no incident in Ohio, but the way Tyler said it, with complete confidence and just enough vague detail, made it sound real. The guards looked at each other again. Tired. Underpaid. Being offered unexpected mercy in the form of a coffee break. 20 minutes, the driver confirmed. 20 minutes, Aaron assured him. We'll have everything documented and verified by the time you get back. They got out of the van, handed over the keys, actually thanked Tyler and Aaron for being understanding about their need for a break. Tyler watched them walk toward the convenience store, their silhouettes getting smaller against the late afternoon sun. Part of him felt something that might have been guilt. These were just working people, doing their jobs, and they were about to become footnotes in a crime that would haunt their careers. But another part of him, the part that had spent 5 years watching his mother's hands shake from overwork, watching Aaron's father pretend to have a job he'd lost, remembered that the system hadn't cared about them either. 11 minutes, Aaron said, checking his watch. Clock starts now. Tyler opened the back of the armored van. $19 million in cash, stacked in sealed bags, organized with the kind of bureaucratic efficiency that the federal government applied to everything except actually helping people. They worked in synchronized silence, loading bags into their red van with the mechanical precision of movers who'd done this 1,000 times. Tyler's hands didn't shake. His mind was clear. This was just data transfer, just moving resources from point A to point B. We're really doing this, Aaron said, and there was something in his voice that wasn't quite wonder and wasn't quite fear. We really are, Tyler confirmed. 8 minutes. 12 million transferred. 10 minutes. 17 million. At minute 10 and 37 seconds, they loaded the final bag. $19 million. The biggest cash heist in American history, and it had taken less time than a typical lunch break. Tyler closed the doors of the red van. Aaron positioned the armored van exactly as it had been, locked it, placed the keys where they'd be visible but not obvious. They had 2 minutes and 23 seconds before the guards would likely return. Now we disappear, Aaron said, moving toward the driver's seat. But Tyler didn't move. He was staring at something in the distance, a utility pole, 30 feet away, with a traffic camera mounted at the top. Tyler, Aaron said, urgency creeping into his voice. We need to go. Now. Pull into that neighborhood, Tyler said, pointing to a residential street visible just ahead. The one with the camera. What? No. The plan is to pull into that neighborhood, Tyler repeated, his voice carrying an intensity that made Aaron stop arguing and start driving. They parked on a residential street in Memphis. Middle-class homes with American flags and basketball hoops. Ordinary. Invisible. The kind of place where a red van wouldn't draw attention because there were probably 20 red vans on this street every week delivering packages and providing services. Tyler got out, walked to the back of the van, opened the doors. "What are you doing?" Aaron whispered, following him. Tyler pulled out 2 duffel bags. Large, heavy, obviously full of something valuable. He placed them at their feet, right in the middle of the street. Then he looked up, directly at the traffic camera mounted on the utility pole 30 feet away. He knew it was there because he'd mapped every camera in a 3-mile radius during the preparation phase. "Making sure they remember us," Tyler said. Aaron understood immediately. His expression shifted through surprise, confusion, and then something that looked like recognition. This wasn't about getting away with it. This had never been about getting away with it. They stood there for 43 seconds. Long enough for the image to be crystal clear. Long enough for facial recognition software to get a perfect capture. Long enough for the FBI to eventually find this footage and realize that these men didn't just steal $19 million. They wanted to be seen doing it. Tyler stared at the camera with something that wasn't quite defiance and wasn't quite pride. Something closer to vindication. Like this was a message, a statement, a middle finger to everyone who'd told them their intelligence didn't matter in a town where the most ambitious thing you could do was manage a Walmart. Then they loaded the duffel bags back into the van, got in, and drove away. Behind them, the traffic camera recorded everything. And somewhere in the distance, 2 armored vanguards returned from their coffee break to discover that their entire lives had just changed in the 11 minutes they'd been gone. The perfect crime was complete, except for the part where they deliberately made themselves visible, which meant it was never about perfection at all. The FBI arrived at the scene 47 minutes after the armored vanguards called it in. By then, Tyler and Aaron were already gone, not just from Memphis, but from existence itself in any way that mattered. Special Agent Rebecca Torres had been with the Bureau for 11 years, specializing in financial crimes and organized theft. She'd seen bank robberies, corporate embezzlement, cryptocurrency fraud schemes that made her head spin. But standing on Highway 64, looking at an empty armored van and 2 shell-shock guards who kept apologizing like this was somehow their fault, she knew this was different. "Walk me through it again," she said to the driver, a man named Kenneth Palmer who looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past hour. Every detail, no matter how small. Kenneth's hand shook as he gestured. "We came around the curve. There was a checkpoint. Official looking. 2 contractors in Sentinel security uniforms. They had badges, proper documentation, knew the protocols. Said it was a routine federal compliance audit. And you believe them. Why wouldn't we?" Kenneth's voice cracked. "They looked exactly like every other federal contractor we deal with. They knew the terminology, had the right equipment, even mentioned some incident in Ohio that changed security protocols. It all seemed." He trailed off, the weight of realization crushing him. "Legitimate," Torres finished. "Because it was designed to seem legitimate." She walked the scene, her trained eyes cataloging details. The fake checkpoint had been dismantled, but they'd left the cones, probably purchased from a legitimate construction supplier, untraceable. No fingerprints on the armored van. No DNA. No witnesses beyond the 2 guards who'd been expertly manipulated into abandoning their post. $19 million. Gone. Vanished into thin air in 11 minutes. Her phone buzzed. Her partner, Agent Michael Chun, no relation to the fake identity Tyler had created, though the coincidence would later strike Torres as almost mocking, had news from the Memphis field office. "We found something," Chun said. "Traffic camera footage. Residential neighborhood. 2 miles from the intercept point. You're going to want to see this." 20 minutes later, Torres was staring at a computer screen in the field office, watching 2 men stand in the middle of a suburban street with duffel bags at their feet, staring directly at the camera. "Freeze it there," she said. The image froze. 2 men, faces clearly visible. One with the analytical intensity of someone solving a complex equation. The other with a half-smile that suggested he was enjoying a private joke. "They wanted to be seen," Torres said quietly. "This wasn't carelessness. This was intentional. Who poses for a photo during a heist?" Chin asked, incredulous. "Someone making a statement." Torres zoomed in on their faces. "Run facial recognition. Check every database we have. These 2 aren't random opportunists. This level of planning, the fake company, The forged credentials, the psychological manipulation of the guards. This is sophisticated. They're smart, educated, and they want us to know it. The facial recognition came back 3 hours later. No matches. Which should have been impossible, except Tyler had anticipated this. The faces in the camera were real. Their faces, but every other digital trace of Tyler Gibbs and Aaron Ramsdale had been systematically erased. Social media accounts, deleted, with automated scripts that had removed cache versions from web archives. DMV records, altered through a combination of social engineering and database access Tyler had gained years ago. Employment records. The real Tyler and Aaron had been replaced in digital systems with the fake identities of James Chun and David Morrison, creating a paper trail that led in 17 different directions, all of them dead ends. It's like they never existed, Chun said, staring at the search results. We have their faces, but no names. No history. No digital footprint. Torres studied the frozen image again. 43 seconds of staring at a camera they knew was recording. This wasn't arrogance. This was something else. They studied D.B. Cooper, she said suddenly. The hijacker from the 70s. Cooper disappeared because he understood that in 1971, surveillance was limited. These two, Torres gestured at the screen, they're doing the opposite. They're using our surveillance state against us, giving us just enough to be frustrated, but not enough to actually find them. It's brilliant. So what do? Torres was quiet for a long moment. We chase ghosts and hope they make a mistake. But Tyler and Aaron weren't going to make a mistake. They'd spent 5 years preparing for this, and the disappearance was as carefully planned as the heist itself. The safe house was a rented property in rural Arkansas, paid for through another shell company, another layer of obfuscation. Tyler and Aaron arrived at 11:34 p.m., exhausted but wired on adrenaline that hadn't fully dissipated. $19 million in cash sat in the back of the van. They should have been celebrating, should have been elated. Instead, they sat in silence in the van's front seats, the engine off, the weight of what they'd done settling over them like fog. That camera, Aaron said finally. What? Tyler stared through the windshield at nothing. Because if we just disappeared, we'd be criminals. Smart criminals, successful criminals, but just criminals. Another unsolved case in a file cabinet somewhere. And now we're something else. Tyler turned to look at Aaron. We're the two kids from Riverside who were smart enough to beat the system. Who proved that intelligence matters, even when the world tells you it doesn't. Who made sure that everyone, the FBI, the media, Patterson, everyone who ever thought we'd amount to nothing, knows exactly how capable we were. Aaron laughed, but it sounded hollow. So this whole thing, $19 million, ruining our lives, throwing away any chance at a normal future. It was about proving a point. Wasn't it always? Tyler countered. The money is just paper. But what we did, how we did it, the fact that we're going to get away with it, that's permanent. That's legend. They unloaded the money that night, sorting it, counting it, dividing it into portions that would be laundered slowly over years through methods Tyler had researched with the same obsessive detail he'd applied to everything else. Real estate purchases through shell companies. Cryptocurrency exchanges in countries with loose regulations. Art acquisitions. Charitable donations that would make them feel less like villains. The plan was to separate. New identities, different continents, no contact for at least 5 years. Tyler would go to Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, places where American law enforcement had limited reach and cash still reigned. Aaron would head to South America, Argentina, Chile, countries with complicated extradition treaties and thriving expat communities. They would become different people, live different lives, and maybe, eventually, die as strangers who'd once been friends. But first, there was one more thing Tyler needed to do. 3 days after the heist, a package arrived at Riverside High School addressed to Mr. Patterson. Inside was a single photograph, the image from the traffic camera, printed on glossy photo paper. On the back, written in handwriting Patterson would recognize, were 4 words. Economics extra credit complete. Patterson stared at that photograph for 3 hours. He should have called the FBI. Should have reported it immediately. Instead, he framed it and put on his desk, partially hidden behind a stack of textbooks where students wouldn't notice, but he could see it every day. Because Patterson understood something the FBI didn't. this wasn't really about the money. It was about two brilliant kids from a dead-end town who'd been told their entire lives that intelligence without opportunity equals nothing, and who decided to prove that wrong in the most spectacular, illegal, unforgettable way possible. 6 months later, the investigation had gone cold. The FBI had devoted thousands of hours, interviewed hundreds of witnesses, followed leads across 12 states. They had the faces but not the names, the crime but not the criminals. The perfect image of two men who'd seemingly materialized just long enough to commit the heist of the century and then dissolved back into nothing. Agent Torres kept a copy of the traffic camera photo on her desk too. Not because she'd given up, she'd never give up, but because it reminded her that somewhere in America, two men who should have been using their intelligence to change the world had instead used it to rob the Federal Reserve. And the saddest part was, she kind of understood why. Tyler sat in a cafe in Chiang Mai, Thailand, drinking iced coffee and watching tourists haggle over souvenirs they didn't need. He had a new name, a new face, minor plastic surgery, nothing dramatic, just enough to make facial recognition uncertain. He had a comfortable apartment, a quiet life, and enough money to never work again. He was miserable, not because he regretted the heist, not because he feared getting caught, but because he'd spent his entire life being intelligent in a world that didn't care, and now he was intelligent in a world where it didn't matter because he couldn't use it for anything real. His phone buzzed. An encrypted message from an untraceable number. Argentina is beautiful this time of year. You'd hate it. Tyler smiled despite himself. Aaron, living under a different name in a different hemisphere, still couldn't resist the joke. He typed back, Thailand has excellent coffee and terrible Wi-Fi. I've never been happier. Both messages were lies. Both of them knew it. They'd pulled off the impossible. They'd become legends. They'd proven that two smart kids from Riverside, Tennessee could beat the FBI, the Federal Reserve, and the entire American surveillance state. And they'd lost everything in the process. Back in Riverside, Tyler's mother still worked double shifts at the hospital. Aaron's father still got up at 5 a.m. and sat in his garage. The textile mill was still failing. Walmart was still the social hub. Nothing had changed, except for one thing. In Mr. Patterson's economics class, when he got to the section on crime and punishment, on risk and reward, on the difference between intelligence and wisdom, he would sometimes pause, look at that photograph on his desk, and tell his students a story about two boys who were brilliant enough to commit the perfect crime, but not wise enough to understand what they'd lose. The question isn't whether you're smart enough to do something, Patterson would say, his voice carrying the weight of regret and admiration in equal measure. The question is whether being smart enough makes it worth doing. Most students didn't understand what he meant, but every few years, there would be one or two who got it, who looked at that photograph with recognition, who understood that Tyler Gibbs and Aaron Ramsdale hadn't just stolen $19 million. They'd stolen their own futures and left behind something more valuable than money, a warning, a legend, and proof that in America, sometimes the smartest thing you can do is also the most destructive. The FBI never found them. The money was never recovered. The case remained open but cold, a permanent reminder that some criminals are too smart to catch. But Tyler and Aaron, living under different names in different countries, had learned something the hard way. You can steal millions of dollars, outsmart the FBI, and become a legend. But you can't steal back the person you used to be. And that, in the end, was the real heist, the one they committed against themselves. Thank you for watching the video all the way through. We hope you sure learned a thing or two from both Tyler and Aaron. Now a question for you, my dear folks. What would you do if you realized you were smart enough to change everything, but the only way out required breaking every rule you'd ever been taught? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, click on the image on your screen to watch more thrilling true crime cases, and don't forget to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons to stay updated with our latest content. Till next time, bye.